For more than 400 years, the dodo has been the animal we use when we want to call something stupid. You know the image: a fat, awkward bird, tiny wings, a ridiculous-looking beak, standing there while humans walked right up to it. And then, somehow, it disappeared. So we turned the dodo into a joke. But there's a problem with that story. We may have completely misunderstood the animal. Because scientists have now looked inside one of the rarest skulls on Earth, and what they found doesn't look like the brain of a helpless, clueless bird. It looks like the brain of an animal that was extremely well adapted to the world it actually lived in. And that changes the story. The dodo wasn't born into a world where
evolved on
humans
Mauritius,
were waiting to
an
hunt it. An isolated island in the Indian Ocean, where the pressures shaping its behavior were completely different from ours. For generations, there were no human hunters walking through its forests, no dogs chasing it, no cats stalking its nests, no reason to look at a two-legged creature and think, run. Then humans arrived, and the dodo didn't understand what they were. That wasn't necessarily stupidity. It may have been the most logical behavior an island bird could have evolved. If nothing in your environment has ever hunted you, why would you waste energy being terrified of everything that moves? And this is where the dodo's reputation began. Humans saw a bird that didn't run away. They called it foolish. But now scientists are asking a different question. What was actually happening inside its head? Researchers used high-resolution CT scans to reconstruct the brains of rare dodo skulls. The brain itself had disappeared centuries ago, but the inside of the skull had preserved something incredibly valuable: a three-dimensional imprint of where the brain once was. Think of it like finding an empty room after the person who lived there has been gone for hundreds of years. You can't see the person, but you can still study the shape of the room. The researchers compared the dodo's brain structure with living pigeons and other close relatives. And the first surprise was simple. The dodo's forebrain, the region associated with cognition and memory in birds, was not unusually small for its body size. There was no obvious neurological evidence that the dodo was some kind of evolutionary idiot. Its brain was proportionally comparable to those of modern pigeons. And that's more interesting than it sounds. Because pigeons are not exactly the dumb birds people imagine. They can learn patterns. They can recognize visual information. They can remember. They can solve surprisingly complicated problems. So if the dodo's brain was built on a similar scale, maybe we shouldn't have been laughing at it in the first place. But then the researchers noticed something much stranger. The dodo's visual system was different. Its optic lobes were dramatically smaller than those of typical pigeons. And that matters because optic lobes are heavily involved in processing visual information. So why would an animal that looks like a normal daytime bird have a brain built differently? The answer may be hiding in the dark. The researchers found anatomical traits associated with birds that are active during low-light conditions: dawn, dusk, and possibly even nighttime. That means the dodo may not have lived its life wandering around Mauritius under the bright tropical sun the way we've imagined. It may have been moving through the island's forests when the light was fading. And suddenly, some of its strangest features start making sense. Because if you're active in darkness, you can't depend entirely on vision. You need other senses. The dodo appears to have had something unusual there too. Its brain showed evidence of relatively strong olfactory development, structures involved in processing smell. Researchers are cautious about this finding, but the possibility is fascinating. Imagine the dodo moving through a dark forest, not seeing everything clearly, using smell to locate food, and using its large bill to investigate its surroundings. Navigating an environment where vision wasn't always the most useful tool. That's not a stupid animal. That's an animal adapted to a very specific world. And there's another clue. The dodo's beak wasn't just a ridiculous-looking feature. Its anatomy suggests it may have been useful for probing and sensing its environment. But here's the part that matters most. The dodo didn't fail because evolution made it stupid. It failed because evolution had prepared it for the wrong world. For thousands, or perhaps millions, of years, Mauritius was its safe zone. The dodo had no reason to evolve a fear response toward humans because humans weren't there. And then, in a geological blink, everything changed. People arrived, and they didn't arrive alone. They brought animals. They changed the landscape. They hunted the birds. And animals introduced by humans could threaten eggs and young dodos in ways the bird had never evolved to handle. Its lack of fear made it easier to approach. Its ground-based lifestyle made its nests vulnerable. Its inability to fly meant it couldn't simply disappear into the trees. And its island home gave it nowhere else to go. The dodo didn't suddenly become bad at being a dodo. The world changed faster than the animal could adapt. We often look at extinct animals from the present and judge them by our standards. Why didn't it run? Why didn't it hide? Why didn't it fly? Why wasn't it smarter? But evolution doesn't reward an animal for preparing for every possible future. It rewards an animal for surviving the world that actually exists. For the dodo, that world was Mauritius, a world without human hunters, where being flightless could work and where its strange body, senses, and behavior were enough. Until they weren't. And maybe that's why the dodo deserves something more than being remembered as a joke. The evidence doesn't tell us that it was a genius. It tells us something more interesting. It was normal. It was an animal doing exactly what evolution had shaped it to do. Its brain wasn't obviously inferior. Its senses appear to have been specialized. It may have been active in low light. And its biggest mistake wasn't being stupid. It was trusting a world that had suddenly changed. For centuries, we've looked at the dodo and laughed. Now scientists are looking inside its skull and discovering a completely different story. Not the story of a foolish bird waiting to disappear, but the story of an animal that was perfectly adapted until we arrived. The dodo didn't fail to survive because it wasn't good enough. It failed because the world it evolved for disappeared, and we were the ones who changed it.